worldservice.com. The climate question.
We've got the latest from a big shipping conference, which is way more exciting than it sounds. They've been deciding whether to instate a world-first kind of tax, one that would make vessels pay more for using polluting fuels.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello and welcome to OS on the BBC. Luke Jones with you live from our newsroom in central London all this week. On our screens here, we're getting some live pictures from inside Hungary's National Assembly, where a controversial constitutional change is being debated. I can see one member on their feet addressing everyone in the large wood-panelled room around them. You might remember back in March, Hungary's parliament passed a bill aimed at banning Budapest's annual Gay Pride March, saying that it infringed child protection laws which prohibit the promotion and displays of homosexuality to children. Well, this constitutional amendment will declare that children's right takes absolute precedence over all other fundamental rights, basically aiming to shore up that ban on pride marches, amongst other things. There's been quite a bit of upset. The organisers of Pride have said this is an attempt to dehumanise them. We will hear from Budapest after the latest BBC News.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. More than 10,000 people have fled Sudan's largest refugee camp over the past 2 days after an attack by members of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Doctors Without Borders says the civilians have left Zamzam in the western region of Darfur and moved to the town of Tawila. Camila Mills reports.
Zamzam refugee camp used to provide a temporary home to 500,000 people, many of whom are facing famine-like conditions. The fall of the camp has upended their already precarious existence. Doctors Without Borders says 10,000 civilians fled not just the camp, but the region to the town of Tawila, more than 70 kilometres away. It's not known how many travelled the shorter distance to the regional capital, El Fasher. News of the attacks comes on the eve of the second anniversary of the start of Sudan's civil war.
A court in Washington has been told that Meta bought up Instagram and WhatsApp after its attempts to compete with the platforms failed. The US Federal Trade Commission is suing the tech giant, arguing the acquisitions unlawfully quashed competition. At the opening of the case, the regulator's lawyers argued consumers did not have reasonable alternatives. Meta, which also owns Facebook, says rivals such as TikTok and X prove there is competition in the market. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has called for Ukraine's allies to put Russia under maximum pressure to end the war. It comes amid widespread outrage over the deadliest Russian attack on civilians this year, when missiles struck the northeastern Ukrainian town of Sumy. Poland's Foreign Minister, Radek Sikorski, said Vladimir Putin might be wasting President Trump's goodwill.
Ukraine unconditionally agreed to a ceasefire over a month ago. The heinous attacks on Kryvyi Rih and on Sumy is Russia's mocking answer. I hope that President Trump and the US administration see that the leader of Russia is mocking their goodwill, and I hope the right decisions are taken.
Russia's Ministry of Defense said it had targeted a meeting of Ukrainian military commanders. The Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, reinforced these comments.
In this case, we're talking about the course of a special military operation, and here we need to focus on the information provided by our Defense Ministry. You know, we do not comment on military operations. I can only remind you of the repeated statements of both our President and our military representatives that our personnel strikes solely at military and military-related targets.
Japan's population of ethnic Japanese fell by a record amount last year, reflecting its declining birth rate and ageing society. Excluding foreign residents, the population fell by almost 900,000 in 2024 over the previous year to just over 120 million. It's the biggest fall since records began in 1950. Including foreigners, it was the 14th straight year of decline. World News from the BBC. The UN says more than 60,000 people have been displaced by last month's earthquake in Myanmar. Using new data from remote sensing equipment, the UN Development Programme said there was around 125,000 truckloads of debris from collapsed buildings that needed removing. The 7.7 magnitude quake killed more than 3,000 people. Markets in New York have reacted positively to President Trump's decision to grant tariff exemptions to smartphones, laptops and semiconductors, notably those produced in China. The tech-heavy Nasdaq index jumped 2% in initial trading, while the Dow Jones was up nearly 1%. Indices in both Europe and Asia are up. Pope Francis has placed the celebrated Catalan architect Antoni Gaudí on the path to sainthood. He's been declared venerable in recognition of what the Vatican said were his heroic values. Gaudí's most famous work is the unfinished Sagrada Familia Basilica in Barcelona, a work that helped earn him the sobriquet God's Architect. A 6-woman crew has returned to Texas after an 11-minute rocket flight lifted them 100 kilometres to the edge of space. The American pop star Katy Perry could be heard cheering as the Blue Origin rocket, owned by the Amazon owner Jeff Bezos, blasted off. His fiancée, the journalist Lauren Sanchez, was one of the passengers on the brief trip. She spoke of her experience.
I looked out the window and we got to see the moon. It was almost full and Earth looked it was so quiet, but then also really alive. And you look at it and you're like, we're all in this together. So all I could think about is like, we're so connected, more connected than you realize.
High-profile travellers are intended to maintain public interest in Blue Origin's work as it competes with rival firms such as Virgin Galactic for a slice of the fledgling space tourism sector. And that's the latest. BBC News.